Welcome to Instruction Discussion, our weekly look at the latest topics and trends in education affecting schools here on Long Island and schools around the world. Whether you're a teacher, parent, or student, listen for tips and strategies to help you navigate the educational landscape. There's a bell. It's time to start today's Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello, I'm Kevin Boston Hill, and welcome to Instruction Discussion, where each week we will examine a recent trend or development in education and its impact on Long Island. Even before the pandemic, and due in part because of the rising cost of tuition and other expenses, families have been asking the question, is it really necessary for me to go to an institution of higher learning to be successful? While the blueprint used to be you get into a good college so you can land a good job that will pay you for about 30 years and then you retire, more and more people are questioning whether college actually increases their opportunity for wealth and whether it makes them better. In his new book, After the Ivory Tower Falls, How College Broke the American Dream and Blew Up Our Politics, and How to Fix It, Pulitzer-Prize winning journalist Will Bunch takes us through the history of colleges in this country to explore their purpose and whether our institutions of higher learning have lived up to these expectations. Bunch also proposes the question that many people are beginning to ask: what and who is college even for? To address this and other questions, we welcome Pulitzer-Prize winning journalist Will Bunch to Instruction Discussion on 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks. And if I could just add really quickly, I just want to say it's great to be back on Long Island. I was actually a reporter for Newsday from 1985 to 1990, covering Babylon Township and the Suffolk County Board of Legislators and all kinds of crazy things like the Shoreham nuclear plant. So wow. It brings back a lot of memories. So I had some good years. I had some good years on Long Island. So it's fun to come back and talk to folks.
Well, it's great to have you. And again, welcome back to Long Island. Thank you for sharing that with us. So I want to go ahead and get right into today's discussion. And because the book was very intriguing, I found it very intriguing. And so I wanted to know first, what actually prompted you to take on this particular topic and write this book?
It really grew out of my curiosity as a political journalist, which is kind of interesting. I was seeing things in American politics that I didn't quite understand. And like any good journalist, I wanted to figure out what was going on. And what it was basically was, during the 90s and the 2000s and the rise of Rush Limbaugh, and then during George W. Bush's presidency, I just felt there was this palpable anger on the political right of American politics. And what interested me was who it was being directed at, because in my gut feeling was that a lot of it was because, factories were closing, jobs were being outsourced to Mexico. And I thought people would be perhaps mad at, the CEOs who were making these decisions and who were making 350 times what their employees were making. And that isn't where the anger was being directed. It was being directed at more like the professional and managerial classes of people, journalists like myself, college professors, Hollywood movie stars, certainly people like that. And, I came to notice, I really felt that the fault line in American culture and in American politics eventually was becoming educational attainment, whether you went to college or not. That there was a lot of resentment from the people without college diplomas towards the class of people who did. And I started thinking about this 15 years ago, and over the 15 years since then, I've just seen this fault line get bigger and bigger, and see it play out really on both sides of the line. So yeah. That's what inspired me. Yeah,
it's amazing or it's interesting how you pointed out that there was this resentment that was being built up between among those who have a college degree and those who do not, and even those who went on to advanced degrees and those who have not. So it seems like there's this divide that has already been created. Now, I know back in the past, it has always been said that someone who attains a college degree has the opportunity to earn up to $1 million more over the course of their lifetime than someone who only has a high school diploma. Do we think that that's still the case? That type of a separation, or that type of the, as you pointed out, the resentment, or that chasm builds, is that still the case that goes on today?
It sort of is. It's complicated. It's complicated in a couple different ways. One is there's no doubt studies continue to show that there's a big premium in the economy for having a college diploma. That if you have a bachelor's degree, or certainly even more so now a master's degree or an advanced degree, you're going to earn considerably more over your lifetime than somebody without a college degree. But I would say two things about that. One is, as the cost of actually attending college got higher and higher, that earning premium has been offset for so many people by the large amount of loans they had to take out to pay for college. So now it's kind of a net it's a net deal. You have the asset of the diploma versus the deficit of having to pay back these loans. And the other thing is, this premium for having a diploma, it wasn't always like this. If you go back 50 years, it wasn't that large. People who didn't have college degrees could go into the workforce, get perhaps a union job because unions were more powerful back then, or a manufacturing type job, and make a decent enough income where they could afford things like a second home or afford a boat, things like that. And that lifestyle's kind of dried up. So I think you make a good point. I think that gap is very important to understanding the resentment. One of the things I learned during my research was some sociologists looked at surveys over the years of people's happiness, how they rate their own happiness. And if you go back to 1970, people with and without college degrees pretty much scored the same. And they went back, I think in 2016 was the base year for the study, and there's now a huge divide, in happiness. And, and we see unhappiness among people without degrees playing out in a number of unfortunate ways. There's been a lot of writing over the couple of years. These two Princeton economists, Case and Deaton, have coined this phrase, deaths of despair, because they've tracked how rates of suicide, drug overdoses, alcohol-related deaths have increased dramatically among the working class, especially the white working class, and for younger and younger people. And what they find is the big dividing line is is whether or not you have a college degree. That not having a college degree is the biggest factor for whether you're succumbing to these deaths of despair. So, again, it's this fault line, and it's one of the reasons I think we're so divided as a country.
I want to go back to something that you just pointed out, as far as at one point you could get into a social service type of job, and you could make a decent enough living to afford a lot of the luxuries that you can have. Has that really gone by the wayside? Has that really diminished? Because I think there's maybe the pendulum may be swinging back that way, because you have a lot of people who are, especially high school students, who are going into these CTE high schools now, these are career and technology education high schools, where they're learning a trade, where they're learning how to maybe go into apprenticeship, because I think in every society, yes, it's great to be a doctor or a lawyer and engineering and make those six-figure salaries, but every society also needs an electrician and plumbers and things of that nature. So,
yeah. Now you make a fantastic point, Kevin. The thing is, I guess I would stress, a lot of these jobs I'm talking about from the 60s and the 70s. A good number of them were like assembly line jobs, so they didn't require much training at all. I think what's happened a couple things over the last 50 years. You're absolutely right. This need for people with certain types of skills that aren't the skills you get getting a bachelor's degree at a 4-year school, but trades in particular, things, contractors, For the book, I didn't neglect this side of the story for my book. In fact, I spent a day. Luckily, it turns out it's 15 minutes from my home here in Pennsylvania. But there's this fantastic trade school in Pennsylvania called the Williamson School of Trade, which was founded by a wealthy man in the 19th century who endowed it with so much money that to this day everybody who gets accepted goes there for free. And so these kids, they learn carpentry, they learn landscaping, masonry, computer assisted design, all of those skills in a 3-year program. And employers are tripping over themselves to hire these kids. And it's a great program. And I mean, that's one of the questions I ask in the book is, can this be replicated on a much bigger scale, and perhaps with some public involvement? Because clearly, like you said, I mean, there's a demand for people who have skills, but not the kind of skills we're teaching in traditional college. But that's part of the problem. I think over the last couple of decades, so much of the conversation has been college or nothing. Even at the very top, our presidents like Barack Obama, would give speeches about, we need to get more people into college, and they weren't wrong, but there's another component to it. Right now, only 37% of adults in this country have a bachelor's degree. So 63% do not have a bachelor's degree. And, it's going to be higher than 37% someday, but it's never going to 100%. So the question is, how do we create opportunities for the other 50, 60% of people who are, maybe go to community college or whatever, but they're not going to get a 4-year bachelor's degree. We need opportunities for those folks.
Well, I think part of that is also what's the attitude that we have towards those particular types of schools. When you start thinking about your community colleges as opposed to a 4-year institution, when you start thinking about a public school as opposed to a private school, I know there are certain attitudes that people have when you start talking about those. I think even one of the schools that you focus on in the book, it caters to like the social elite, but the community where it's housed in doesn't mirror what the population of the school is.
Yeah, you're talking about Knox County, Ohio, which is a fascinating place because it's the home to Kenyon College, which is, it's a great institution of higher learning that produced all kinds of famous writers and presidents, and great people have come out of this school. And right now it costs $75,000 a year if you pay the full tuition and board, which is just insane. So anyway, Kenyon's located in this very small town called Gambier, Ohio. And if you look at the 2020 election in Gambier, Ohio, Joe Biden got 89% of the vote. But then once you leave Gambier and look at the rest of the county that it's in, Knox County, Donald Trump got 75% of the vote. So you're just talking about this incredible divide. And I think you're right, Kevin. So much of it is just our attitude and how we view people. And I think that really affects a lot of the political division that people, among people in the working class, there's a palpable sense that they're being looked down on, and I talk a lot in the book about the whole concept of becoming a meritocracy, because is college attendance started to take off in the 1950s and 60s, people said, America's becoming a meritocracy, meaning you can rise as high as you can in this country if you work hard, that everybody, regardless of class, has an opportunity now to get a higher education. And if you do that and you do well, then you're going to move up. Then you're going to move up the ladder. And there are a couple of problems with that. One is, as a meritocracy, it's very flawed. Over the years, we found ways instead to perpetuate elite classes, sending their own kids to college and making it harder for other people to get in. So that's one problem. But I think the other problem is if you're saying your society is a meritocracy, and if you're saying that the determination of who has merit is getting a college diploma, and if only 37% of people are getting a college diploma, are you really telling the other 63 people that they're deficient, that they lack merit somehow, that they don't. And that's a vibe that a lot of people feel palpably. So that's, I think, when you look at our political divisions, what inspired folks to vote for a controversial figure, for want of a better term, like Donald Trump. I think these, people tend to look at policies and ideas, and those matter, of course, but I think these deeper cultural feelings really drive a lot of our politics.
You are listening to Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Kevin Boston Hill, and our guest today is Pulitzer-Prize winning journalist and author of the new book, After the Ivory Tower Falls, How College Broke the American Dream and Blew Up Our Politics, and How to Fix It, Mr. Will Bunch. Now, I want to get into, because I think you raised a couple of good questions, got a couple of good points there about the political aspect of those who are in college and who have received degrees, and especially this idea of, if we're going to be a meritocracy and only 37% of all Americans actually possess a bachelor's degree, aren't you really establishing more of an elitist type of society where only basically you're perpetuating the haves and have-nots, because college is becoming so expensive. Like I said, the example you pointed out, $75,000 per year. College is becoming so expensive that only a select few are going to be able to afford it anyway. Or you turn to the point where families who have the means are, we saw the scandal, the Varsity Blues scandal, not too long of a few years ago, right, where they were pretty much buying their students' way into school by doing certain things. So are we moving in that direction and creating a pathway that is basically begging for illegal things to happen, or are we just kind of really widening that gap between the haves and have-nots when it comes to education?
I would answer possibly all of those things, really. I'm glad you brought up the Varsity Blues scandal, because it does. I think it tells us something really important about college, and I get into this a little bit in the book, which is, the kids in the Varsity Blues scandal. Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman's kids, and the children of these other either famous people or wealthy people, where their families felt they had to cheat, basically in crazy ways, pretending that their kid was a crew or fencing star, or, I guess the more old fashioned, paying somebody to take the SATs for you, which, our former president, Donald Trump, is rumored to have done that as well. So that's kind of an old tradition, I guess. But in the book, I asked people to take a step back and these are people from wealthy families. So, they probably have something along the lines of trust funds set up for them, right? So why do they need to even spend one day in college? They can just graduate high school and, do whatever and know that they're going to inherit wealth and they're going to be fine. But the thing is, again, it's this meritocracy concept on some level, but it's not just economic or intellectual merit. It's social merit, that going to the right college, the fact that I'm somebody who is going to an elite college like USC or Yale or somewhere like that tells you about who I am, that I'm a worthwhile person, because these schools that are exclusive and are hard to get into, they wanted me. So I'm a person, and it's not just the students, it's the parents, to be honest, too. It's like, parents feel the fact that I was able to get my children into the best schools shows what kind of family we are, what our values are. There's a sociologist at NYU named Caitlin Zaloom who wrote an entire book about this, and, who basically said in the last 20 or 25 years, this pursuit by the upper middle class to get their kids into the right schools has become the defining feature of life, that nothing, that not just the kids, but the parents are often, willing to go into debt or spend the money that they were supposed to save for their retirement, instead to send their kid to what they think is the right school. So that's that, but this whole system really falls harder, I think, on the true middle class, people who aren't super wealthy, but who want to stay in the middle class or go up the next rung and do a little bit better than their parents did. And, those were the people, those were the kind of people who I think really benefited in the 40s and 50s and 60s when you had the GI Bill or when tuition was really low for these kids. And now to do the same thing, they can get into college, but, to meet the gap between the limited financial aid they're getting and what the college actually costs, they're advised to take out these loans. And think about the choice that you're hitting an 18-year-old and his or her parents with, that you can either not go to college, and as we discussed earlier, your lifetime earnings will be $1 million less, and you'll feel terrible about yourself and that you have less worth because you don't have a college diploma. Or you can do this because you're a smart kid, and we know that if you get into college, you'll graduate and do okay, but you're going to have to borrow $50,000, $75,000, $100,000, and if you don't get a great job out of the gate and you start falling behind on these loans, there's interest and they start to accumulate, and so you meet these people who a few years after college they have six-figure debt. In the book I profile this one kid who, between him and his mother, who's a single parent who makes $50,000 a year, but the two of them together have $180,000 in debt. And that's for attending Temple University, which I think is a great university. I've taught there as an adjunct actually in journalism, and I think it's a really good school, but it's not an elite school. In fact, Temple was created 150 years ago to be a school for the middle class. And now you have people from the middle class or lower, working class going there and incurring six-figure debt, which is just crazy. So, these are some of the inequities the system creates. I mean, in the book, I think you have to think about the fundamental question, which is higher education a public good? Whose responsibility is it? Is it the responsibility of the broader society? The way that we view K through 12 education, we all pay for K through 12 education in our communities, often, at least where I live, through property taxes. And if your kids have graduated, or if you don't have kids, you're still paying those taxes, right? And yet we've decided to view higher education completely differently, that you're on your own, that, if you want to do this, you're going to have to take out a loan and become part of this capitalist bargain where you're going to have to pay it back. And the problem is, having a college diploma nowadays means the same thing as having a high school diploma did, say, in 1946.
So with all these things that are going on with the impressions and the attitudes and the implications of college, what and who is college even for today? There's
at least two that I know of, and I think possibly more books from a conservative or right-wing perspective that say that college is a scam. There's a book now that I think is pretty popular, and the title is something like "Don't Go to College," I think is the title of the book. For some people, we probably should, develop more of these, certificate or training programs or trade schools or vocational schools, for people who want kind of an intermediate approach. But to me, I think the challenge of college is not throwing the system out, but how do we make it better? Because there are so many advantages to people getting a true higher education that isn't just focused on career skills, learning how to code and IT, and that's really all you learn, but learning about the humanities, literature and music. And I think that comes from college. What I find is, having researched college to do this book and having talked to a lot of people, there's not really a lot of dissatisfaction with college itself. I mean, people from around the world, from Asia and China and India and all these countries are still clamoring to go to American universities, that we actually do a pretty good job. I mean, I think there are some valid criticisms of education. I think some schools have made it a little bit too easy to graduate, to keep their student retention rates and tuition flow in. And that's a little bit of an issue. But by and large, the quality of American education is good. The crisis of college is affordability and access. Who can pay for it and who has the opportunity to get education in this country. That's the real crisis. And so that's the conversation I want to start. I think the people who are writing books saying don't go to college or that college is a scam. I mean, these people are nihilists, and they want to perpetuate a system that devalues learning and devalues education. And that's tended to advantage certain types of political movements over the years.
I agree with that point, and because I think that it goes back to a lot of people have the mindset of it's the type of school that you go to and not necessarily that you go to a school, period. So it's the name of the school that matters, or the name at the top of the diploma that matters to some people, as opposed to the name in the middle of the diploma, which is yours. And because I've always felt that it's not necessarily the school that you go to, but it's what do you do at that school? Because, you might get into Yale or Princeton or Stanford or something under whatever merits or what have you, by hook or crook. But what do you do with that education? And if you go to a lower tiered school, but you fully immerse yourself in the experience academically, socially, and what have you, and you may actually come out, dare I say it, as a better citizen because of how you immerse yourself in every aspect of college. I think that's the mindset that we really need to be focusing on and teaching our children as they start to approach the college area.
Yeah, you just hit on something that's so important because, I think we all know this instinctively that, when you get that college diploma and go out into the job market and you send out your resumes or go on interviews, the thing that the job recruiter is really looking at is where did you go? So if it says Yale on your diploma, they're going to be a lot more impressed than if it says, Kutztown University, even though Kutztown University offers a great education for a lot of kids, especially the ones who, like you said, immerse themselves in learning, and it's created this system where, so much pressure is applied before age 18 to get into the right school. This whole thing with people spending thousands of dollars on SAT preparation and tutoring and everything, so a kid gets accepted into the right school. And then when they do, like you said, when does a job recruiter ever ask, what did you learn in college? Or not even what you majored in. I mean, sometimes they ask that, I guess, but just, what was your college experience? And it gives people permission to try and, coast through college, doing the minimum to graduate and, to take advantage of the social benefits of being on a college campus for 4 years. And, I think the social benefits of college are great. I don't think we should eliminate those, but I think there needs to be some balance with people going to college and feeling at the end of those 4 years they have actually learned a bunch of things that they didn't know going in.
No, I think you're absolutely right on that. And we could have this conversation for the rest of the day, but we would definitely like to thank our guest today, Pulitzer-Prize winning journalist and author of the new book, After the Ivory Tower Falls, How College Broke the American Dream and Blew Up Our Politics, and How to Fix It, Will Bunch, for coming on to our show today.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And once again, my name is Kevin Boston Hill, and thank you all for listening to Instruction Discussion, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.